Life is full of big moments of change and transformation where we have to pivot on our path.
Those moments come with a wide variety of emotions, from fear and anxiety to joy and relief.
I'm Kelly Koopmans.
And I'm Mary Nam, and this is Hard Turn.
Hi, Kelly.
Well, hi, Mary.
And
How are you
hello,
doing
everyone.
today? Hi, everyone.
We forget to acknowledge people.
I know, with all of these cameras in
Yes.
here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. You know, this is a day we're glad to be able to bring people together. We spoke to Emily Cantrell, and she's the CEO of Seafair. She's a board member of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, or formerly was. Formerly Visit Seattle. She was named as one of the 40 under 40 for the Puget Sound Business Journal. And what brings her here today is that she is a survivor of the Las Vegas shooting, the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. She was there, and this is the 8-year anniversary.
Since that happened, it is the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history with a lone gunman. 60 people died, hundreds of others injured. It was
413 injured. She's going to walk us through not only her experience that day, but how it informs the work that she does today as the CEO
Absolutely.
of Seafair, and lots of reflections on where the system could improve.
Here's Emily. Emily, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you.
You as well.
CEO of Seafair. You had a very busy summer.
Yes.
And congrats on the success of Seafair, by the way.
Thank you so much. We're really happy with it.
What was it like pulling it off for the first time?
Oh, it was incredible, especially moving the parade to the waterfront for the first time in the 76-year history. That was awesome.
Did you like how that fell on your lap?
Yeah, I was actually told that it was happening. And I thought it was done. And then when I started in the role, I learned, yes, the idea of it moving, yes, it had been talked about for years, but all of the heavy lifting really started last fall, and dozens, if not 100 plus meetings and presentations, but we did it.
It was awesome.
What's so cool is that Seafair here is it's a holiday for everyone, and it brings a lot of joy to people. And I think that's something that motivates you in this role, and we'll kind of dig into that as to why. We like to get right to the hard turn, the thing that kind of changed people's trajectory or something that had a big impact on them. And for you, it was that you were a survivor of the Las Vegas shooting back in 2017. Would you mind walking us through that, what you remember of that afternoon, night?
Of course, yes. It was a 3-day music festival, the Route 91 Harvest Festival, and filled with amazing country musicians. And so it's something that I looked forward to each year. It was my 3rd year there, and Sunday night is always the big headliner. And so it was just after 10 p.m., and it had been a perfect weekend, and I had been down there to celebrate my engagement, actually, with the other couple that we were with, asked them to be in our wedding. So it was just a really beautiful weekend. And then, working in TV news, I've never been someone who thought this can never happen in my backyard. I always knew that there was a possibility. And when I heard the noise at first of the bullets being fired, it sounded like firecrackers. That's what we all thought they were. But then the second round happened, and the woman right to our right went down and was covered in blood. And that's when I realized it's finally happening. Something that I've been dreading and fearing my entire life, really. And I've hated guns since I was a kid, and then working in TV news and hearing about all these horrific incidences, I realized, okay, it's happening right now. And watching Jason Aldean, who was the headliner, watching him run off the stage, that's when it became very, very real. And so whenever we heard the rounds being fired, that's when everyone just tried to find a place to duck and cover. And people would pile on top of each other, try and protect each other, try and find some sort of structure to hide under. But it was about 10, 11 minutes of running, diving. And in the end, there were 4 of us, and we wound up underneath what we later learned was kind of the production area, and it was a metal structure, and so there were bullets ricocheting off above us, which was unfortunate because we didn't know if it was coming from helicopters above or people. We actually thought there were people in the venue firing. We had no idea where the shooter or shooters were. And we also ended up getting separated. And so I ended up running with, at the time, it was my fiance's friend. And we wound up in a small airplane hangar. And there were 2 different times on my way to there that I thought I was shot. And at one point, I just stopped and I didn't want to run anymore. I didn't think it would ever end. And so I just stopped. And someone in front of me, a stranger, he turned around and he said, "This is life or death. On the count of 3, we're going to run." And he counted to 3 and we ran together. We were able to pull up a metal fence, climb under it, and that's how we ended up getting to that hangar. And then eventually someone moved us into a bigger airplane hangar where there were probably a couple hundred people there. And we just sat for hours not knowing what was happening. And eventually police came and escorted us to UNLV. The campus was nearby. And we took an Uber back to the hotel. And my life has forever changed since then. It was just several hours and being separated from your loved ones. It was terrifying.
The chaos from what you're describing,
Yes.
it was not just you hear it, you see the woman next to you fall, and then you run to a certain place. It sounds like you're running, hiding, stopping, running again. Everyone's getting separated.
Right. No one knew where the exits were. They actually turned the lights on in the venue. And in hindsight, I'm not sure if that was a smart thing to do because now we know where the shooter was, high above in a nearby hotel, and that gave him more visibility into where people were. So, I mean, who knows what the right thing to do would have been, but all we knew to do was just run and try and get out of there.
Now that there's been a lot of time since the shooting, we've heard all different types of stories of people who helped people, carry people. There were lots of heroic stories in there. I honed in on you mentioning the guy who told you this is life or death, run. What did that do for you in that moment? Did you just need the extra? What was that moment?
I think I needed the extra, you need to do this, the extra push. I just bought a new pair of Lucchese cowboy boots. Had I not worn these boots, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today without those boots and without him. A lot of people were wearing flip-flops, and their sandals fell off of them, and they were cutting their feet, and they couldn't run anymore. And so I think between the boots I was wearing and then this stranger who I wish I could find out who he was. I wish I could thank him today. But I just needed someone to remind me, you still have a chance. Let's keep going. Don't give up yet.
How did it change you going forward? You say your life's been different ever since then.
Well, I don't take a single day for granted. Not that I did before. I think I'm someone who's always, sought the best and most out of life, just lived every day. But on the plane ride home, I just had this feeling. I didn't know what it was. I now know it was survivor's guilt. Because it was just a sinking feeling and a feeling of guilt. Why am I going home when 58 others aren't? And so it was actually as soon as we got back to Seattle, I started researching gun violence prevention organizations. And I found Washington Ceasefire, local organization. I reached out to the CEO, and he agreed to meet me for coffee. And that was the first time I felt like, okay, I'm going to do something. If I'm still here, for whatever reason that is, I am going to just try and put my energy and efforts into something that can maybe create some change. And so I ended up joining this local nonprofit for a little bit, and then I emailed our state legislators, including David Frocht, who I'll talk about in a minute. I was at the Washington Ceasefire. It was a 5-year Sandy Hook anniversary event. And David Frocht, a former senator, he spoke there. And I hadn't heard back from him since I wrote the letter. And so when he came down from the podium from talking, I went up to him. I said, "Senator, my name is Emily Cantrell. I want to introduce myself. I was in the Vegas shooting." And he stopped me. And he said, "I know exactly who you are. Your letter's on my desk. I'm so sorry I haven't responded. Can I call you tomorrow?" I'm like, Sure. Okay. I'll never hear from you again. He called the next day and we talked for, I think it was more than an hour. And he didn't realize that at that time I had tried seeking a therapist. And the obstacles that you encounter for something like this, it's not okay. I saw one therapist, and on the second visit, she said, I can't build to that code. That code probably meaning a mass shooting, because what I was told by different therapists is, yes, I can treat PTSD. But once they hear the story, they flat out, they don't know how to help. And I had one therapist say, we can try meditating. I'll bring a book in next time, we'll meditate. I'm like, no. I tried a clinic at the University of Washington and for PTSD, and all the questions they asked, it was all about other types of trauma, domestic violence, rape, and there's nothing in there about mass shootings.
Did they say why that is?
I've never gotten an answer for it, but I have worked in the human services industry and have worked with Medicare, Medicaid, and so I know a little bit about medical billing. And so this is just what I'm assuming happened with the codes that people had trouble with. There's just not a way at the time, there wasn't, to bill for them. So in that conversation with David Frucht, when I was telling him about this, he said, I want to draft a bill. I want your help with it. I want to make it easier for victims of gun violence to get help. And we ended up working on it. And it is something that ended up passing. And it required there to be a list of resources for survivors of mass shootings. It required it to be published in certain areas. It involved harbor views. So I'm really glad that he listened and he wanted to help make a difference. And he invited me to testify in Olympia that year. And that is when we passed the bump stocks ban. And before Vegas, I didn't even know what a bump stock was. A lot of police officers, from what I hear, also didn't know. But it just allows a shooter fire these shots more rapidly. So he told me that it was my testimony that really made a difference. And at that time, the Alliance for Gun Responsibility reached out to me after seeing my testimony and hearing it and asked me if I'd be interested in joining their board. So I ended up working with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility for about 6 years. I just stepped down last fall after we had passed the ban of assault weapons.
What did that do for your healing journey to be able to jump into action and make a tangible difference?
It gave me hope. It gave me a reason to keep going. And I have dreaded every day since Vegas that there would be another deadliest mass shooting. I don't ever want there to be another deadliest mass shooting. We can't have another Las Vegas happen anywhere. And so with each bill that was passed, I was like, okay, this is working. And it was statewide, federal level is a whole different story, but I felt like we were really just paving the way here in Washington for a safer environment for everyone.
Were you able to find that right therapist or the right person to help you?
I think I ended up seeing between 8 and 10.
Wow.
And I took some time off, and then I ended up finding 2 who really helped. And one was just online at BetterHelp on the website, and I think it was maybe during the pandemic. I can't remember exactly. And so that was great. I did a mindfulness-based stress reduction course last year, MBSR, and that was an 8-week course, and that has changed my life personally and professionally too. So yes, I did end up finding a couple good ones. There was one, actually the first one, that made a huge difference for me. She's a combat veteran.
Wow.
And I found her maybe a year after the shooting, but then she quit her practice. So that's why I had to start over.
That's tough to go through 8 to 10 people. And if you were thinking, if I'm in this position and I'm able to dedicate the time and resources to try and go through 8 to 10 people, and what if people don't have that amount of time or access to a number of people? It just goes to show how tough the obstacles that exist for any number of people in any number of positions to find help.
It's so true. I flew back from Vegas on a Monday. I tried to go to work on Tuesday. don't recommend that. So at the time I worked at World Trade Center Seattle. I had just started there a couple months prior, and I was in the elevator and I went up to the 4th floor, and an executive from Columbia Hospitality, which oversees World Trade Center, he got in the elevator. He's like, "Hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend?" And I just burst into tears. And he looked at me like, "What is happening?" And at the time, I learned my boss, she didn't tell anyone what had happened to me, and because no one knows how to handle this.
No.
And so she did what she thought was best and didn't tell anyone what I had been through. And so it was on me to tell people, which was really tough. And so I ended up going into my office, and I just curled into a little ball. I called her, and she came to visit me, and she's like, "You need to go home, and we don't want you coming back until you have a doctor's note. And we're going to pay you for this time." And that saved me. It makes me emotional to talk about it. But so many people, they lost their jobs. They then couldn't pay their bills. A couple of people have committed suicide since then. Who knows if maybe these were contributing factors, but to have an employer who was supportive of me was everything. I'm so fortunate that I had that.
You mentioned some of the really heartbreaking things that you experienced and you also observed. I don't want to just focus on the negative part, but I also don't want to gloss over what the dark time really looked like. You're very successful, the CEO. You've had a long, successful career path. This October will be the 8th anniversary.
Yes.
Early on, when you flew home after that weekend, can you describe what the following months, maybe years, were like as far as the specific challenges that you encountered?
It's very tough. So Thanksgiving was the first big holiday, and I was at Friendsgiving with some friends, and I remember sitting on the couch at a friend's house watching football, and I had a beer in my lap, and I lost it. There were kids running around in the house. Our friends had little ones at that time, and I went outside, just started bawling. I felt so guilty again for being with loved ones, drinking a beer. Another hard thing was my family didn't talk about it. And when I asked them about it, they said, "We don't want to talk about it." And I didn't think I would get emotional. But I really had to find my own way through it. And I'm someone that, I talk about these things. I talk about difficult things. But my poor parents, they almost lost me. So, of course, they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think people just not knowing what to say, what to do. I wanted to just have a big sign around my neck saying, "I'm struggling, be gentle with me." But it's really tough to go on with your life. And then, the anniversaries were tough because the rest of the world just keeps moving on. And it's how are you acting like everything's normal when it's not? And sadly, this is still happening today. And so many lives are impacted every time something like this happens. And the fact that it's still happening daily in our country, it's really tough.
It's something that's had lingering effects for you as well. I mean, I just think about the most recent Seafair, for example.
Yes.
And there was a fireworks show. What was that experience for you? Was that...
Yeah, go figure. So I no longer like fireworks. Well, I should say I didn't like fireworks.
Okay.
It used to be, the 4th used to be one of my favorite holidays. And I didn't know until it was the Mariners' home opener that following spring. That's when I learned I no longer like fireworks. They went off unexpectedly for me, and then I just, once again, cowered and cried. And so I had left our country every 4th, or at least the region. But the last couple of years, I had left the country. And then when this job opportunity came available at Seafair, I very well knew that Seafair puts on the 4th of July here. And I figured, well, this is the next step of my post-traumatic growth journey. I'm ready for this. And I actually got to work with our radio partner, iHeartRadio, to produce a soundtrack. So that was really cool. And then the fireworks company we worked with let me watch the simulation. So I watched it twice.
You could anticipate.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I cried both times at the end. But being there on the 4th, there was a sense of dread. But my whole team, they were so supportive. They know my story. They knew I was anxious. They were very gentle with me. Like, if you need to go home, just go home. I said, absolutely not. So I stayed there. And when it was time for the fireworks show, there were two firefighters right by me. I was like, hi, I'm going to just stand right here. So just let you know, I don't love fireworks so much, but I feel safe with you. And I told them why. And standing next to them made a difference. But then during the show, when you could hear everyone singing and cheering and you just saw all the smiles on people's faces, it made me fall in love with the 4th again. Not necessarily because of the holiday itself, but because we got to bring the community together and we got to help spark joy for tens of thousands of people who were at the 2 parks that we activate. And that for me was very cool in a time where I feel like we need it the most. Bringing people together and creating that was it. I loved it. And now I like the 4th again.
Congrats on that milestone, by
Thank
the way.
you.
That's
That was a big one.
huge. That's huge.
Thank goodness for those firefighters too.
Yeah.
They always come in handy, don't they?
Just at the right time. Yep. Right place, right time.
Emily, what would you say, last question, what is your advice to someone who has been in your shoes, who has experienced this specific type of trauma? Evidently a type of trauma that there is no code for in some medical billing places, which is shocking to hear. But someone who might be lost, looking for advice, looking for guidance, that you've experienced yourself, what would you tell them?
I hope that that's changed when it comes to medical billing. But I would say something that helped me was finding other survivors. And at the time, Facebook was still used a lot, and there was a survivors network. And being able to find someone to talk to who has experienced something similar to you, of course, they'll have different stories. But for me, that was healing, to find someone who could at least relate to you in some capacity. So that's probably the one thing that I would start with recommending.
It's like the through line for you is community.
It really
Whether
is.
it's finding community and
Yeah.
other people who've gone through something like you, or building community for people to all connect. And I think that it's a really lovely thing that you're able to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks for revisiting the most painful part of your life with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Wow.
Yeah. It was emotional in here.
Yep. And I have to say, I mean, I know of Emily's story. She's given interviews before, talking about what happened to her, and then to have her sitting right in front of us and reliving some of that. It's really hard to hear.
I think she even said it caught her off guard, feeling emotional about it. And it's something that kind of resonates. You know, you can talk about something so much and then you change setting, or you talk to an individual about it for the first time. And I think people who either are recovering from a traumatic event or grieving or, you know, whatever, experience that wave can just kind of crash over you at any given point. So it was so kind of her to share that and to admit, I'm kind of surprised that that caught me so much in that moment. But what a story.
One of the things that really struck me was hearing, here she is a can-do person. And here she is trying to find help for herself proactively. And listening to her describe all of the walls and the hurdles and how difficult it was, it's agonizing. And you know that there are other people going through that exact same thing right now, that things haven't changed so much in the last 3 to 5, 8 years, you know, that all of these issues are resolved. That was really eye-opening.
Something that was really astonishing to me is it just shows how people can choose to cope with something so differently. While Emily was like, I'm going to cope with this survivor's guilt by taking action immediately, reaching out to state senators, getting involved, getting legislation. I can see that as a path. I can also see where someone's like, gosh, I want to get away from this horrible thing that happened. And I think it really speaks to a lot of the bravery and also just trusting herself, that she knew the way that I can best cope with this is by just what you said. She's a doer. So action.
Yeah.
And she sure did that.
And that example of how people that you know and love and are so close to, for example, her parents, everyone deals with trauma in a different way. And we talk about that, in this podcast many, many times, how there is no right way. And I think the trick is learning to coexist with people who need to do it differently.
And finding the places where you can
Yes.
get that out.
Yes.
So in her example, if it wasn't through her parents, but because she knows that that's not how they want to cope, find the people where you can, or find the outlets that you can. And when we were chatting with her after the fact, she says, oh, she was in therapy for this up until last year.
Yeah.
So that's, 7 years. It also goes to show that it's a long road. And hopefully if you can dedicate the time and resources and have access to tools, if you're so lucky to have those things, that it can help. And hopefully some of the action she's taken can make that path just a little bit easier for other people.
I also want to revisit what she said about this year's Seafair and the fireworks show, and what a truly meaningful milestone that was to go from someone who didn't care for fireworks to begin with, and then to be triggered by them because of the mass shooting.
To leave the country on the 4th of July.
To get away from all of the fireworks.
Yeah.
To heading up, Seattle's best, brightest fireworks show, and then watching everyone smile and learning to love it again is just, I so admire her.
I would say the parallels with the fireworks are also with these festivals. I mean, her trauma happened at a thing where you get these masses of people gathered together, and her job is to do that very thing, to bring massive amounts of people together for something that is kind of the definition of Seattle summer when you're talking about Seafair, and bringing people together in a safe way. And what an accomplishment for her to be able to check off year number 1 of being the CEO at Seafair and pulling off the event too.
I can't help but wonder, there are many, many survivors of that horrific shooting. And, for each person, it's an individual way of how they got through it. And we just listened to one wonderful example. So much courage, so much, and also a lot of anguish. And I could just see the pain in Emily's eyes just talking about some of the hardest parts, and quite frankly, just revisiting that awful time. And how she said part of her therapy was to record herself talking about, describing it over and over again, and then having to listen to it. It's just gut-wrenching.
Right. It also makes me think about the other people who don't cope that way, who for them coping is maybe a quieter experience, a more, introspective experience, and that's okay too. Just listen to your heart. If you know your body best, you know yourself best, seek out help the way that feels best to you. And for Emily, it looked like the story that she gave us.
It's such a extraordinary experience, and we want to thank Emily for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily, and we'll look forward to Seafair next year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and keep celebrating all together.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks.